This conference will now be recorded.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Google Docs. In this class, I'll be providing an overview of the free web-based word processing app known as Google Docs. All right, Google Docs is a great alternative to Microsoft Word in case you don't have access to Word. Okay, we typically need to purchase Microsoft Word or subscribe to Office in order to get access to that program. All right, so Google Docs is a good free alternative as it includes many of the same commands and tools as Word does, and everything's pretty much done the same way. So if it's also a great class if you've used Word before and you want to kind of learn about Docs, because you'll see that whatever you've learned in Word, you could easily apply that knowledge to Google Docs because the two programs work very, very similarly as they are designed to do the same thing, create and format a document. Okay, so what I'd like to do is first talk a little bit about Google Docs. All right, just a few kind of important characteristics of Google Docs, and then I'm going to open up Google Docs on my computer. I'll introduce us to the screen, and then we'll get started with some exercises. All right, so as I mentioned, Google Docs is a free web-based word processor. Okay, so all you need is an internet connection, and you do need a Google or Gmail account. Now, in the Google Drive class last week, I did explain that you do not necessarily need a Gmail account. You can just create a Google account using an existing email you already have. All right, and I'll just quickly run through how to do that again in a few minutes. So as long as you have that Google or Gmail account and an internet connection, you can get access to Google Docs in addition to the other great Google apps that are out there. All right, since we are using Google Docs over the internet, all right, all the Google Docs, okay, all the docs that we create and save and access again and again, all that is being done in Google Drive, which is why Drive is shown here. Again, last week we went over Google Drive. Google Drive is kind of the central hub, okay, the file storage platform for all the files that you're creating and saving using these Google apps. So it's kind of like the folders you have saved in your Windows operating system or maybe in your Mac operating system. All right, it's the same thing. You are saving your work and you're putting that, assigning those files to different folders. All that takes place in Google Drive. All right, so Google Drive, again, it's kind of the central hub where we store our files and also from where we are launching these different apps, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, etc. So if you need more information on using Google Drive, I encourage you to check out their recording on our YouTube channel. All right, now since we are doing this over the internet, it also makes it very easy to create and collaborate on documents with people in real time, something I kind of explained last week in the Google Drive class. Okay, so you can share your document with other people, they can share theirs with you. And you could all collaborate on the same document at the same time if you want. All right, so you could all be, it's almost like you're in the same room, but you can all be on different computers, different parts of the world. As long as you're signed into your Google account and looking at the same document, you can all look at it, format it, edit it at the same time, as if you're all huddled together in the same room. Now, as Google Docs is a Microsoft Word equivalent, all right, we can very easily convert Microsoft Word documents to the Google Docs format. We can also download Google Docs to our computer, all right, or Google Docs files to our computer, convert them and open them in Microsoft Word. So the two file formats are compatible. Because remember, with Google Drive, we don't just use it to save work that we've created using Google Apps. We can also use it for backup storage. We can take a Word document from our computer and upload it to Google Drive as a backup copy. All right, but we can take it a step further by taking that Word document and opening it in Google Docs to continue working on it if we need to. All right, Google Docs also makes it very easy to revert to any prior versions of a doc. So as you probably know, in real life, when we are creating a document like this, that document takes several different iterations, right? We put some information in, we save it, we add to it, save it again, and we just keep adding and saving until we're finally done. So each time we save, we're creating a new version of that file. With Google Docs, we can go back to any of those earlier versions if we need to. Okay, so if we decided that this looked better before I made these changes, I can revert back to that version, for example. All right, so today we're going to explore the Google Docs graphical user interface, or what we sometimes just call the Google Docs screen, okay? And we're going to look at the work area where we type up our document. We're going to perform a series of word processing exercises, which will better familiarize us with this app. And along the way, we'll discuss some other key features, including saving the Google Drive and downloading a doc to your computer, again, so we can open it in Microsoft Word if we have Word installed. All right, give me one moment. I'm getting a sip of water, and then we're going to move on. All right, so what I'm going to do now is go ahead and open Google Docs on my computer. Now, for those of you here in person, you don't need to worry about this. You already have that doc open on your computer. But if you just want to watch up front, I'll remind you of how we sign into Google Docs in the first place. All right, now it is possible to install a Google Docs app on your computer and use it as kind of a client, just as you would with other programs that are installed, like Microsoft Word, for example. But what I do typically, and what I show the patrons and students here at the library, is just to access it on the web, which is very simple to do. So I'm going to launch my web browser first. Now I'm using Google Chrome as my internet or web browser. You do not have to use Google Chrome in order to get access to Google Apps. You could use any web browser you want, Edge, Firefox, even Safari on a Mac, okay? I just happen to prefer Chrome. I typically use it more than the others, so that's why I'm using it here. But again, you could use whatever browser you choose to access your Google account and in turn, the Google apps that are found there. So now that I'm on my browser, I'm going to make my way to google.com, which is kind of the first step in getting to the Google app. So we're on the google.com homepage. In the upper right-hand corner, you have your sign in button where I'm drawing with that red pen. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that to sign into my account. Okay, now in case you don't have a Google Gmail account yet, I will quickly review how you can create one. So from here, I would sign in with my username and password. If I didn't have an account yet, I could come down here to the link that says create account. I would click on that. I would select for myself. And then here are the steps involved. Very simple. First name, last name. You create a username. You create a password. Now, it's going to, as a default, assign a Gmail account to you. Notice it says username @gmail.com. If you don't want to create a Gmail account, if you already have an existing email like Yahoo, Hotmail, AOL, whatever it might be, you can use that existing email account and use that to log into the Google Apps. If you want to do that, underneath of where I just drew with that red pen, you'll see this link that says use my current email address instead. Okay, by clicking on that, it will get rid of that @gmail.com extension and allow me to put in whatever email address I want here. All right, so, and that's going to act as my username, my sign in, every time I want to come back and sign into my Google account and then get into those apps. All right, now once you complete this information, you'll also have to assign a phone number to your account. This we see with many email providers nowadays. Okay, it's there in case for identity verification purposes, in case you forget your password or they're detecting a possibly a fraudulent sign-in attempt. So you must assign a phone number to your account so Google can either text you or call you with a special password to sign in and authenticate your identity. Okay, but after we complete that, you will then have a new Google account created and you're all set. It's very quick. Now I'm going to go back to the sign-in screen because I do have a Google account already. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my username and then my password. Now, once I sign in, it takes me back to the google.com homepage, but the sign in button at the top right has turned into my profile icon, the first letter of my username. That tells you that you have successfully signed in. Now that button with that letter, okay, that acts as your main Google account settings access, where it says manage your Google account. All right, we're not going to worry about this. This is really for your main account. All right, so you could always kind of explore that on your own when you have some time, just to kind of see what settings are available. What we are concerned with in this class is the icon to the left of that. That looks like 9 little dots. If you point at it, it does say Google Apps. I'm going to go ahead and click on it, and it will launch a menu, of those Google Apps. Now there is a vertical scroll bar on the right to scroll down for more. And if I go all the way to the bottom, a link to more from Google for even more apps than what are shown here. But today, we're concerned with Google Docs. So I'm going to scroll up about halfway, and you'll see Docs right here. I'm going to go ahead and click on it to launch this app. Now, in Google Drive last week, remember I did show you that you can go to Drive first and then launch your apps from Google Drive. You can do that as well. But in this case, we're just going to launch Google Docs directly from the Google homepage. All right, so when we open up Google Docs, if you've taken Microsoft Word with me or really any Office class, this might look a little bit familiar to you. So when we use Microsoft Office, the first screen we come to is the Start screen. All right, the Start screen in Microsoft Office. In fact, I'll show you real quick here. Let's open up Word for 1 second. All right, so this is the Start screen in Word. On the right side is a template gallery. On the left side are recent documents that I've created and saved in Word. Now here in Google Docs, we have something very similar. The Start page in Google Docs has a template gallery up here, and then recent files or recent documents down here. Okay, so same idea. Now remember, templates, if you're not familiar with templates, they are those ready-made specific types of a project, which allow you to create that kind of project very quickly. In this case, they're specific types of documents, all right, based on different tasks or themes. So for example, Google Docs has some resume templates. It's already built and designed. I would simply open it up, erase the generic text that's there, and put in my own unique text. You can also go to template gallery here to get access to even more templates. And you can even do a Google search to potentially download even more than what you see here. All right, but for today, we're going to be using a kind of a traditional document. So let me go back to the main screen by using the back arrow up here next to where it says template gallery. Underneath the template gallery, we have recent documents like I just mentioned. So these are all recent Google Docs that I've created and saved in Drive, okay, but they're now accessible here in Google Docs. So because we're in the Google Docs app, whatever you see here are going to be either Google Docs files or potentially Microsoft Word documents, since they are compatible. All right, so again, because we're in Google Docs, you're not going to see Google Sheets, you're not going to see Excel spreadsheets. Okay, that's because we're in Google Docs. It's only going to show me the files that are compatible with this program. Okay, and remember, I did point this out in Google Drive. When I scroll down, just remember the importance of the icons you see. Where it is, I'm looking for a specific file. Maybe because I didn't open it recently. That's okay. All right, but I'm looking at this one here. This says Word 2000 Dance Studio. Now, you'll see the one next door here. This is the Google Docs icon. I'll put a D there for Docs. On the left side, we have a Microsoft Word icon. Okay, so that tells me that this particular file, this document, is a Microsoft Word document that I uploaded to my Google Drive and can now access and edit in Google Docs. I'm going to scroll back up now. And now launching one of these existing documents, you simply click on it and you will reopen it. Very simple. One single click, it opens up and you can start working on it again. All right. A couple more things before we open one of these. To the right, you can change your view of your documents using this icon here. Right now, it's giving me a grid view. If I prefer a vertical list of all the different docs that are accessed here, I can click on it and it will give me a list like this. Okay, I'm going to go back to grid view. Next to that is a sort tool. If I want to sort, right now it's sorted by last opened by me. If I'd rather sort it by last modified, so the last one that was changed, I could sort it that way. I could also sort it alphabetically by title. Okay, I could also use this file picker, which links to my Google Drive if I want to kind of use the Google Drive view instead to get to my different folders. Okay, but in this case, we could just look at what we have under recent documents. Now remember, for those of you attending virtually, if you have any questions, just click on that chat bubble, type in your question, and hit send in the chat box. Now, if we were to start a brand new Google Doc, we would just go up here and click on the plus sign that says blank. But in this class, we're actually using one we've already, we're using an existing doc, which you already have open. All right. So in a second, I'm going to open up that doc. I just want to remind you real quick, at the top right, you have your universal Google controls. Okay, you still have your Google account icon and your apps icon in case you want to get to those things from here. So I can open up more than one app at once. If I want to open up Docs and Sheets at the same time, I can do that, of course. I just go to the apps menu and select the Sheets to open that up in addition to this. In the middle here is a search tool, which allows me to search for specific files. This will search not just Google Docs, it will search everything in my Google Drive. And then over to the left, we have our home button, the Google Docs icon. If you ever at any time need to get back to this main start screen, use that home icon. All right. I would try not to use the back button in your browser because that might take you too far or not far enough depending on where you are. So if you want to get back to this start screen specifically, use the home button. Last but not least, you have the 3 lines here, or what we sometimes call a hamburger menu. All right, that's just a kind of a menu for more options. All right, I can get from here to a few other of the popular Google editing apps, including Sheets, Docs, or excuse me, Sheets, Slides, and Forms. I can get to my Google Docs settings. All right, here's help and feedback for Google Docs. Remember I told you Google has a great support site. So here it is, help and feedback. And then down here, a link to my Google Drive in case I want to get to that central hub where everything, not just Google Docs files, where everything is stored. Now I'm just going to click outside of this to close it. So now what I'm going to do is launch this Google Doc, the same one I sent you, called Word to Dazzle Dance Studio. Okay, that's a good question. If you're not seeing some of these same options, it is because, actually, let me click on this because I'm going to explain this in 1 second. Word to Dazzle Dance Studio, this is mine. So, okay, so for those of you who didn't sign up with a Gmail account, okay, or if you don't have one or don't have a Google account, I sent you a copy of this doc. In fact, everybody, in person and virtual, everyone has their own copy. It's not the same as mine, so it's not linked to mine. Okay, so if you are one of those people who might not, if you don't have a Gmail or Google account, okay, you're going to be able to edit this copy like I can. However, you'll see that some options are going to be disabled. That's because you're not actually signed into a Google account. Okay, I shared the copy of the document with you. You can edit it, but in terms of saving it and accessing some of the other Google functions that we might review, you're not going to see them because you have limited access. So just something to bear in mind. All right, because again, the real point here is to practice editing and formatting, which you will be able to do. Okay, but you'll see that when you save your work, it's actually going to be being saved to my Google Drive because that's where it came from. All right, in fact, since we're on that subject real quick, if you do have a Google or Gmail account and you want to save a copy of this, okay, you can go to your file menu. As long as you're signed in, you should be able to make a copy under file and create your own copy that you could use for yourself and use this one for practice today. Okay, so we've opened up this Google Doc. Again, Dazzle Dance Studio Annual Report 2021. If this sounds familiar to you, it is because it is the same document we used in our Word 2 class. In fact, the exercises we're going to do today are pretty much identical. I do that on purpose because I like for you to see how things are done in Word versus how they're done in Google Docs. And you'll see that for the most part, everything is done the same way. Okay. Let me zoom in a little bit here so you can see that more up close. All right. All right, so let's talk about the work area and the menu first, and then we'll start formatting this document a little bit. Okay, we're going to make some changes to this document to improve it a little bit. So first of all, the document itself. Okay, again, if you're a Word user, this looks pretty much the same. We have a piece of paper on the screen where we type up our document, and above that piece of paper is a menu that holds all the commands available to us in this program, okay, for formatting. Now, the work area itself, as far as typing onto the page, it works just like any other word processing program, okay? In Google Docs, we have the blinking insertion point. That's your cursor that tells you where the text is going to fall when you start typing. It tells you what change or where a change is going to take place when you make that change. So the insertion point acts as your locator. So you can move the insertion point with your mouse by clicking one single click. You can also use the arrow keys on your keyboard to go up, down, left, and right. Again, just like Word or any other word processing program. Okay, Google Docs also has built-in margins, those empty spaces on the top, bottom, left, and right. Right, that's standard in Google Docs as well. Google Docs also is built in with text wrap. So as you type from left to right, okay, the program will drop you down to the next line automatically without you having to do anything. When you do need to start a new paragraph, just like in Word, we press the Enter key. All right. Oops. All right, and last but not least, another thing we're often doing, just like in Word, is we are selecting our text. So with that I-beam that I'm waving around with my mouse, with a click, hold, and drag, I can select text, or what we sometimes call highlighting the text. And we do that typically to, that's our first step before we format that block of text in some way, whether it's changing the font size, changing our alignment, left, center, right, et cetera, okay? There is a vertical scroll bar on the right as well to scroll up and down through the document. Just like in Word, Google Docs gives us continuous pages. So as we're typing and we need a new page, it will automatically give us a page 2. If I kept typing down, 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 it would then give me a page 3, et cetera, et cetera. All right, right now this document is spanning 2 pages. Eventually that's going to change, but right now it's 2 pages. I'm going to scroll back up to the top. Now, above the work area, above that page, all right, we have our menu that holds all the commands available to us in Google Docs here. Now, this is one place where it kind of deviates from Microsoft Word a little bit. Now, I'm going to actually, I always like to open up Word for this part real quick because it helps to compare and contrast the two. So if you are, again, if you're a Word user, especially if you're using Word 2007 or later, okay, let's open up Word for 1 second. Okay, the menu in Microsoft Word, here it is. It's called the ribbon, okay? And the ribbon is organized by these tabs, such as the Home tab, Insert, Design, etc. So when I click on a tab, I get a different set of tools for each tab. So notice how the menu commands or options change totally depending on what I click. All right, so let's go back to Google Docs. In Google Docs, we have a more old school approach. Okay, kind of like how Word used to be, before 2007. So we have a standard toolbar here, which contain the most basic and perhaps most frequently used formatting commands. All right, this toolbar doesn't change. No matter what we click, this toolbar stays the same. Now, you'll see that all these tools are accessed through icons, but if you point at them, they will tell you what they are in case you're not sure. All right, so generally speaking, we have our undo and redo on the left here. If you ever need to undo, there it is all the way to the left. There's a quick print, a quick spell check, and a format painter, which we might use a little bit later. I'm not sure if, I know we use it in Google Sheets. I'm not sure if we'll get to in this class, but that is available here on the left. You have a zoom tool here to zoom in or out. Okay, some quick text styles like we find in Word. Our font size. All right, so this group here are essentially your font commands, or at least your basic ones: font size, bold, italic, underline. Okay, text color and highlight color. All right, these are things that you can insert into your document. Not something we're really going to use too much here. You can insert a link or an image, for example. We have our alignment tools over here now, going to the right. So left, center, right, justify, just like we find in Word. We have our line and paragraph spacing, which we will adjust in this class. Okay, Google Docs also supports bullets and numbered lists, just like Word does. We can do checklists, bulleted lists, numbered lists. And then your decrease and increase indent tools. Now, if we need to use a tool that's not found in this toolbar, there are others, then we consult the drop downs up here, starting with edit. Okay, you'll notice that as I go to each drop down, I get a whole bunch of options. Now, typically these drop downs, they're going to repeat the same tools that are in the toolbar, but they're also going to have extra tools that are not in the toolbar. So sometimes we'll have to use these drop downs. In fact, we're going to need it, one of these in just a few minutes. Okay, but generally edit, kind of the same things we find on the very left side of that toolbar: undo, redo. Also cut, copy, and paste are here. And your select all and find and replace tools. Two things that allow you to sift through large amounts of text to look for something and select something. We're going to use these today. Select all and find and replace. Okay, in your edit menu. In view, some quick ways to change the view of your document. Under insert, where we go to insert objects like pictures, tables, text boxes, just like the insert tab in Microsoft Word. All right, so typically when we need a graphic of some kind, we come to the insert dropdown. We also come here for headers and footers. We're going to come back to this shortly. All right, the format dropdown, basically ways to format, the same things we find in the format group here, or the font group up here, and the alignment group up here in the toolbar. They're repeated here in the format dropdown along with some additional options. All right, under tools, we find some tools that we could use to kind of organize ourselves and check for any errors. We have spelling and grammar here. We have a word count tool, a citation tool for academic research. There's a voice typing tool. Also at the bottom, accessibility settings, in case you need to make adjustments to those accessibility options. All right, add-ons, these are kind of just extra tools that you can add to the native version of Docs. Typically, you download these Oftentimes they're free. You can download them and then they'll kind of be integrated into your Google Docs app through your account. Okay. Zotero is just it's a academic research or a bibliography organizing tool, something we don't really use much. It's really for research papers and academic papers. Okay, and then there's a help menu here, again, for help and feedback. All right, so with all that, now that we covered the lay of the land, let's jump into this document and we'll kind of explore more of these tools in more depth. So we're looking at this document, again, called Dazzle Dance Studio Annual Report 2021. So what we have here is a professional document. All right, it's an annual report for our company called Dazzle Dance Studio. So it doesn't look, I wouldn't say it looks terrible, but we're going to make some improvements to this, just kind of based on our own preferences, and in some cases, kind of what we should do according to sort of word processing conventions. All right, what is considered normal in some cases. All right, so we have our annual report. We have this subtitle called highlights. So these are highlights from our main annual report. So presumably we have a full annual report somewhere else. This is just kind of the highlights from that report. Okay, a quick look at our main accomplishments from 2021 for our dance studio. Now each accomplishment, each highlight is given its own paragraph. Each of those paragraphs begins with in 2021. All right, so we can see as we scroll down, we have a total of 6 paragraphs. That means 6 accomplishments that we are describing in detail. Okay, so what we're going to do is format this and change some things around. The first thing we're going to look at is the layout of this document. We're going to look at the layout, things like margins, line and paragraph spacing. Then we're going to talk about the styles, things like your font size, bullets, and numbering. All right, think of styles as ways to emphasize points made in your document, to clarify them. All right, or just to, again, to kind of bring them to the fore. Last but not least, in our last stage, we're going to review it for any errors, and we'll correct them. All right, so first, like I said, we're going to start with our layout in just one second. Before we even do that, I want to insert a header and footer. If you're not familiar with headers and footers, okay, Microsoft Word has the same tool. Google Docs allows us to put text into our top margin and down into our bottom margin. Okay, when we do that, we are inserting a header in the case of the top margin, and we're inserting a footer in the case of the bottom margin. We usually use headers and footers for identifying information. Things like the author of the document, the date in which it was written, page numbers, and maybe a couple other things like the department you work in or the company, things like that. So things that don't really have too much to do with the content of the document itself, more to do with, again, who wrote it, when, and how it's organized. Okay, so let's start by inserting a header. To insert a header, all right, you have a couple choices. You can either go to your insert dropdown and select header, or go to headers and footers down here and select header. All right, because we need to manually leave the normal text area, that's why we need to manually insert a header or footer. So again, insert dropdown, headers and footers, click on header. You can also just double click into the top margin and it will just put you directly into the header position. You'll notice that dividing space where it says header, which just indicates that we're now in the header position. Okay, so I want to create a 3-section header, left, center, right. So we're gonna have to kind of do a couple things in order to create that. First, let's just start with our name. So we notice that the blinking insertion point is set up on the left margin. Go ahead and type in your first and last name. We'll start there. So again, insert dropdown, go down to headers and footers, click on header. If you get a little message saying a blue box that talks about watermark, just click got it and dismiss it. So type in your first and last name. All right. Now, in order to create 3 sections, left, center, right, we can't just center our alignment, okay? Because all that's going to do is take this text that we've already typed and move it over to the center. We need to create what's called an alignment tab, okay? So think about the tab key on your keyboard. When you press tab, you indent, okay? So we're kind of creating a stop for that indent where it's going to go. So we're going to create an alignment tab in the center and an alignment tab on the right margin. So we can have a center section and a right section. In order to do this in Google Docs, it's pretty simple. And we can also do it this way in Word. You'll see the ruler at the top here, that horizontal ruler. If you click on that ruler, you'll get a little menu. And it's asking add left tab stop, add center, add right. All right, again, the ruler, not the toolbar here. Right under it is a ruler. All right, if you don't have the ruler, I'm not sure, is it turned off in Google? Okay, go to your view dropdown and select show ruler. I apologize. If you don't see a ruler, go to your view dropdown, click on show ruler so it's checked off, and then you'll see the ruler. Again, view dropdown, click on show ruler. Good. Now go to that ruler and click on it. Good. Now we want to add a center tab stop. So click on that. And you'll see a little diamond pop up in your ruler. All right, now this is a little tricky because even though it said center, it's going by where we clicked. So eventually, this takes a little bit of math, but that's the only part I don't like about using this ruler. In Microsoft Word, we can do this a different way. Here in Google Docs, we have to rely on the ruler, which also means we have to do a bit of math. So if our page is 8.5 across, 8.5 by 11, right? So it's 8.5 left to right. Our margins are eventually they're going to be 1 inch on both sides. So we subtract 2 inches, we come to 6.5. We divide that to get our center, which is 3.25. So take that diamond, you can click and drag and move it, and just move it right or left depending on where you are until it says 3.25. All right, it's going to go perfectly on one of those little tick marks and leave it there. 3.25. Now that it's there, if you press the tab key on your keyboard, it's going to go to that tab stop. Now that I'm here, I'll type in Google Docs practice. Now it's not going to look perfectly center. That's because of the margins. We're going to fix that in a bit. Google Docs practice. Or if you want to type in Dazzle Dance Studio again, whatever you want to put there is fine. All right, now we're going to create a right alignment stop or an alignment tab. So once again, we'll go up to our ruler. Now, if you want to try to get it exact the first time around, you'll see where that blue triangle is. That's the end. Okay, or should I say that's the beginning of your margin. So if you click kind of right above that, or just to the left of it, you'll get that menu again. Select Add Right Tab Stop. Now you'll see a triangle that's pointing towards the left here. Click and drag that to the right until you're at 7.5. So it's all the way to the edge. So now if I press tab again, it's going to go to that stop. There it is. Now I'm going to put in the date. Now we don't have to type in the date. Just like Office, Google Docs allows us to insert a date. It will just automatically put in today's date. Since we need to insert a date, are there any guesses as to which menu we need to go to? Good, the Insert menu. So go to Insert again, just like before with headers and footers. And the sixth option down is Date. Click on Date. And then click on today's date, unless you want to do a different one, that's fine. And there it is. All right, and if you click on the date again, you'll get a few other options as to how that's formatted. If you go to the little settings gear here, okay, how that date is formatted, but we're just going to leave it as is. Again, if you click on the date, click on the gear icon, you'll see other formatting options, but I'm just going to leave mine just as it is. All right. All right, now there are ways to adjust your headers and footers, so we're not going to go over them, but I just want to remind you that just like in Word, when we create a header, the header is running or continuous, which means it's going to be applied to not just this page, but every other page in the document. If I create a page 3, it's going to put that header there, so on and so forth, okay? If you want to change that, there is the different first page here where you can have a different header on your first page, okay? But we're just going to leave that. We're going to leave it as is. Last but not least, we want to create a footer, and in that footer, we're going to put a page number. All right, so let's go back up to the Insert dropdown, down to Headers and Footers, and this time click on Footer. Now we're in the bottom margin of the page. Down to Headers and Footers, and then Footer. All right, we can just put the page number there where it is on the left. I think that's fine. So let's just, now this one is a little bit different. Again, we want to insert a page number. We shouldn't type it in. We should let the program do it for us. All right. Now I wish that they had page numbers under the Insert drop down. That would, to me, be kind of intuitive. Oh, actually they do. Here it is. Okay, for some reason I thought this wasn't here. In your Insert drop down, kind of like when we inserted a date, you can also insert page numbers. So go to Insert and go down to page numbers. Now, the option it's showing you, that's where it's going to put your page number. All right. We can also go to more options and just click apply here, and it will just put it where your cursor is. And again, with page numbers, just like the header, if I have a page number, they're going to just continue automatically. So I have page 1 here, page 2, etc., as I create more pages, if I create more pages. All right, I'm going to scroll back up to the very beginning of the document here. All right, now if you're still in your header or footer, just double click outside of that dividing line so you're back on the normal document. What's that? Just click, you're good. As long as you don't see that line that says header or footer, that means you're back in the normal text area, which is where we want to be. All right. Now, typically, if this was a Word class, we would be saving right now. However, because this is a Google Docs class, okay, your work is saved automatically. Now, again, if you don't have a Google account or Gmail account, yours is being saved to My Google Drive. In fact, really all of yours are right now, unless you created your own copy. Everything's being saved to My Drive because that's where they came from, okay? Now, if you keep your eyes on this section at the top here, just to remind you, if I make a change to this, it says saving, and then it says saved to drive, okay? So in Google Docs, or really any Google app, when you are creating and then changing or editing your work, Okay, all of your updates are being saved automatically to your Google Drive. There's nothing you need to do manually. All right, it's all done. Also next to that little indicator, there's the folder icon with the arrow in it. That's, if you point at it, it says move. Okay, if you know ahead of time what folder you want to put this into in your drive, if there's one created, you can assign it a folder from here. Again, you don't have to, it's going to go to your main drive, but if you know a folder that you want to put it in, you can put it right into that folder from here. All right, so now let's get into the layout of this document. All right, let me go back down here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to verify the dimensions of my margins. Okay, those empty spaces, top, bottom, left, and right. In a normal document, your margins should be 1 full inch on all sides. So each margin, top, bottom, left, and right, should be set to 1 inch. Again, in Microsoft Word, that's how it is. All right, what are considered normal margins, okay, are 1 inch. So we want to verify that here. Let's make sure. If they're not, we'll change them. Okay, now this one is a little bit tricky. To get to some of these kind of page setup or layout options, we don't have a page layout tab like we do in Word. We go to our file menu, believe it or not. So go to your file menu. Let's see here. Okay, and you'll see almost all the way at the bottom is page setup. Go ahead and click on that. Okay, this is kind of actually, it's almost like again, it's sort of like older versions of Word. Okay, once upon a time, Word's page setup options were in its file menu, so that's where they are here in Google. Okay, so we're in the page setup box here. Okay, we do have pages, it's not pageless. Okay, so we're going to leave it as pages. It should say apply to whole document. If it says selected content, it's because you have something selected on your document. So just click cancel, unselect it by clicking outside of it, and then come back to this page setup box. Okay, but it should say whole document. Now, from here, just so you know, you can assign, in addition to changing your margins, you can also change your orientation, portrait and landscape. You can change your paper size if you happen to be printing on 2 different size piece of paper. You can also assign a page color, okay? But we just want to go to margins here. And as you can see, they're all set to 1/2 inch, which is incorrect. So whoever created this, they did the wrong thing. All right, now just so you know, when you create a new Google Doc from scratch, it's already going to be set to 1 inch. But we're just pretending that this person changed it to 1/2 inch because they thought they were able to do that. So we want to make them or put them back to 1 inch. So all I have to do is go into each box and put a 1 there. Just replace that 0.5 with a 1 for top, bottom, left, and right, all 4, and then click OK. Now our margins are all set to 1 inch. And now that Google Docs practice, okay, that center section is perfectly centered horizontally. okay? So now instead of 1/2 inch margins on all sides, we have 1 inch margins. And again, that was saved automatically to the Google Drive account. Now the next thing I'm looking at is my line and paragraph spacing. So remember, each accomplishment, each highlight is given its own paragraph, which does make sense, okay? It's typically customary when we're typing or even handwriting to separate different ideas or sections into different paragraphs. That's why we use different paragraphs. But I'm not really happy with the way the lines are so spread apart, because it kind of makes it hard to differentiate one paragraph from the next. It almost looks like one giant paragraph because everything's so spread out. So just like in Microsoft Word, Google Docs makes a distinction between line spacing and paragraph spacing. All right. All of the lines that are part of one paragraph, okay, those are what we call contiguous lines. So when we adjust line spacing, it will impact the spacing between those lines. So this is line spacing. Now when we press the Enter key to start a new paragraph, like here, that space is a paragraph space. So we have line spacing, which is the space between lines in one paragraph, and then paragraph spacing, the spacing between one paragraph and the next. So what we want to do is change this from single line spacing to decrease this space, but keep the paragraph spacing as is. So the first thing we need to do is select the lines and paragraphs that we want to format. So we're not concerned with the title. We're not concerned with the subtitle. We just want to start with the body of the document itself. So I'm going to highlight this first line. I'm going to keep my mouse pointer out to the right. Notice where it is. I'm waving it around. And then I'm just going to move it down, and it's going to select each subsequent line as a block. And as I move my mouse down, it will just automatically scroll until I reach the end. And you'll know you've reached the end when you see $845. So that's the last thing you should be highlighting. So select your first line. I'll do it again. Left to right with a click, hold, and drag of the mouse. And then just keep your mouse pointer out to the right of your document. And then just move it down. And let it scroll until you reach the end. Don't let go of the mouse button until you're done. Once you see $845, you can let go. And then just very carefully scroll back up. Don't click onto the page, just scroll back up. Good. So let's adjust the line and paragraph spacing for these lines and paragraphs. Remember I told you this is in your main toolbar. So right up here in the main toolbar, to the right of our alignment options, we have line and paragraph spacing here. If you're having trouble finding it in the toolbar, you can also go to the format dropdown and go to line and paragraph spacing here. Either one will give you the same menu. Okay, so we see right there, we have single, 1.15, 1.5, double. That's our line spacing, not paragraphs, lines. So we want to make this single space. So we're going to change it from double to single. Just click right on single. So notice what happened. We have single space between the lines, but we still have a slightly wider or higher space between the paragraphs. So we can kind of see that these are each 6 individual paragraphs a little bit better now. Now, if you ever want to adjust your paragraph spacing in Google Docs here, let me go back to that line and paragraph spacing tool. Okay, you'll see add space before paragraph and then add or remove space after. So you can add and remove. Typically, we only add space after paragraphs, not before. Now, in terms of how much space you get between your paragraphs, that's controlled under custom spacing here, okay? So if you go to custom spacing, you'll see again line spacing. 1 means single. Paragraph spacing, we assign it a number of points, just like we do in Microsoft Word. So right now it's 6 points after. If you wanted to make it those spaces a little bit wider, you can go up 8, 10, whatever, and then click apply. Again, so line and paragraph spacing in Google Docs, right here in the toolbar, or your format dropdown. Okay, the first few options is your line spacing. Under here is your toggle to add space before, or add or remove space before and after paragraphs. But if you want to have more customization in terms of the spacing between your lines and paragraphs, you go to custom spacing here and make your adjustments. All right, any questions so far? Are we okay? All right. Now in Google Docs, a command or operation that many of us might be familiar with already is cut, copy, paste. Okay, cut and paste or copy and paste. So as you might know, this is something that you can really do anywhere. If you're using a PC, okay, you can do this really in any program, not just a word processing program like this. We can often do this with a keyboard shortcut. But just to be consistent, I'm going to show you how to do this from Google Docs' menu, especially if you're not using a PC, or if you're using maybe a tablet, okay, you could use the menu to cut, copy, and paste. And that's going to be in your edit dropdown. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down a bit. Now this one's a little nitpicky, but just go with me on this. So we have those 6 paragraphs. I'm going to number these real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and way down here is 6. 6 paragraphs. Now, paragraph 3 introduces this gentleman named John Doe. He's a new hire, so we're mentioning him here. John Doe is also mentioned down here in paragraph 5 for a different highlight, a different accomplishment. So it might make more sense if the 2 paragraphs talking about John Doe are on top and bottom of each other instead of having something in between. So what I want to do is cut paragraph 4 and paste it above paragraph 3. Does that make sense? So we're basically just swapping the paragraphs. Paragraph 4 is going to move up here so that this one and this one are on top and bottom of each other. So we'll do that with a cut and paste. So the first step in cutting and pasting is to select the portion that you want to cut. So go down to that 4th paragraph, the one that starts with in 2020 we updated the studio. All right, and select that paragraph. Okay, and a little tip. Okay, just like in Word, if you triple click 1, 2, 3, you'll select an entire paragraph. No more, no less. Now the next step in cutting and pasting after selecting the text is to then cut it. So I'll go up to the edit dropdown and select cut. Again, up there in that main menu under edit, click on the menu and select cut. All right. The next step, step 3, is to give this block of text a new location. We do that by relocating the insertion point. So I'm going to just click before paragraph 3, like this, one single click. Okay, paragraph 3 is the one that starts with in 2020, we created and filled a new position. So I clicked there, and that's my way of telling the program where to paste this portion of text. Now we come to our 4th and final step in the cut and paste process, which is to go ahead and paste it. So I'll go back up to the edit dropdown and click on paste. All right, and if you're getting a prompt about keyboard shortcuts, just click got it or whatever it says to dismiss it. All right, the reason you're getting that is because Google Docs does support PC keyboard shortcuts. So if you are used to doing a cut and paste with Control X and Control V respectively, you can do that as well. You don't have to use the menu above. So Google Docs does support the same keyboard shortcuts you'll find in other PC-based programs. Control X for cut, Control V for paste, Control C for copy. But we did it using the menu because, like I said, I just want you to see where it is up here, and also in case you're using a Mac or using maybe an iPad or some other tablet. Okay, and if it was a Mac, if you have a Mac computer, it would be Command X, Command V instead of Control. All right, so did we all do the cut and paste okay? We relocated that paragraph? Okay. We're gonna get a quick sip of water, and then we're gonna move on to our next exercise. All right, now let's, so the layout is looking much better. We adjusted our margins, made them all 1 inch. We changed the line spacing to single space, but kept the paragraph spacing as is. And then we just used cut and paste to reorder the sequence of these paragraphs. So now we're going to talk about the styles, all right, the things we use in a word processing program like this to emphasize points made. So one way we often emphasize something in our text is to just make it a little bit bigger than the rest of the text. So we're going to go to our title here. This is Dazzle Dance Studio Annual Report 2021, and we're just going to increase the font size. This one's very simple. So go ahead and select your title. You can either click and drag, or remember, because this is technically its own paragraph, we could also do a triple click. 1, 2, 3. Why is it its own paragraph? Because we press the enter key after it. Anytime you press the enter key after something, you're creating a paragraph. So now that I've selected the title, I'll change the font size. This one's very simple. We'll go up to our toolbar. Okay, it says font size 12. You can either type right into the box with a different number or use the plus sign and minus sign. Or you can click on the box where it has the number and you'll get a list. All right, 3 ways to change the size. Of course, if you use the list, you have to use one of the ones here. If you want something that's not listed, you could either, again, type it in, use the plus or minus sign. So let's just make it 16. So in this case, I'm gonna have to type into the box 16 and then press enter. Oops, did I undo my selection? 1 second. There we go, 16. And Google Docs does support half sizes like Word does. So if you wanted 10.5, 11.5, you could type that in as well. Now, the next thing we want to change is the font itself. You may have noticed that the header and footer is a different font. Okay, that's because of the way that I saved this. We're actually going to match that in a minute. So right now in the document itself, the normal text area, okay, the title, subtitle, and the body, we're using a text called, or a font called Comic Sans. I know because if I look up there in the toolbar, it says it right there, Comic Sans. Now, just as the name implies, comic, this is usually a font we use for more lighthearted correspondences, maybe like a fun email to a family member or friend, or maybe like a party invitation. Okay, Comic Sans is not really something we would use in a professional, formal document like this. So we want to make it something a bit more formal. So I want to select all of the text in my document. And by all the text in my document, I'm excluding the header and footer. All right, so when I say the whole document, I'm talking about the normal text area. Okay. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. So we want to select all of the text in the document. Now let's just pretend for a second that this document was 30 pages long. If I use the click, hold, and drag method, we could do it that way, just keep scrolling, but you never know, we might miss something. we might accidentally click and undo our selection, and then we're only selecting a portion of it, things like that. So a quicker and safer way to select all the text in our document is to use the Select All tool. Okay, so just like Microsoft Word, Google Docs has tools that allow you to sift through large amounts of text and look for something specific in that text, locate it, those specific things, and potentially change them. Okay, so those tools are going to be in your Edit dropdown again. So let's go back to the Edit dropdown. So I'm talking about Select All and Find and Replace here. All right, these are tools, again, that allow you to sift through large amounts of text, look for something, select that something, and maybe change it if we have to. So in this case, we're just going to click on Select All, and it's going to automatically select all of the text in the document. If you have something selected already, make sure you click outside of it to undo that, and then do Select All again. And the keyboard shortcut for this, by the way, with a PC is Control-A. If you're using a Mac, it would be a Command-A. So here we are, we've selected all the text with just a click of the mouse. So now we want to change the font, so we'll go up to the toolbar to where it says Comic Sans, click on the drop-down. Now we want to use something formal. Okay, in this case, because we want to be formal, there's nothing wrong with using two of the old standbys, Arial or Times New Roman down towards the bottom. Okay, those two are always acceptable, Arial and Times New Roman. In this case, we'll use something slightly more unique called Book Antigua. So click on Book Antigua under B, and that's going to match your header and footer. Okay, it's still formal, it's just a little bit different than Arial Times New Roman, something a little bit, just a bit more unique. Okay, now let's click anywhere on the document to undo that selection, just get rid of that highlight. All right, we're still talking about styles. Now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking it might be better to kind of turn this into a different type of document in a way. So what we have now are 6 paragraphs. Essentially what we're doing is, if you think about it, we are listing the highlights from the main annual report. So it might make more sense kind of visually if we convert these normal paragraphs to a list. Okay, because that's essentially what we're doing. Kind of like when somebody says to you, give me the bullet points or give me the highlights, that's what they're asking for, kind of a bulleted list. So let's turn these paragraphs into a bulleted list. It's very simple. First, we need to select the paragraphs, and then we just apply our bullets, just like we do in Word. So starting with your first paragraph, in 2021, Dazzle Dance Studio saw an increase. We're going to select that first line, and then just keep your mouse pointer out to the right and move down the page until you reach the end. And you'll notice that we're onto one page now. Once we went to single spacing, we're now on just one page. Now up in your main toolbar, okay, with your alignment and paragraph tools, a little bit more to the right, you have your checklist, your bulleted list, and your numbered list. We're going to do bullets. Now, if you click on the drop down next to the bullet icon, you'll get a few other options as to how those bullets will look. Oops, did I just, oh, no, I didn't, good. There we go. Now, if you're a little bit confused about what you're seeing there, I'll take a quick detour for a second. So word processing programs like Word and Google Docs, they allow you to create something called a multi-level list. Okay, we usually use these for outlines where we have like a heading, a subheading, and then supporting points, and then we go to our next heading or topic, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what you're seeing there. So you create a multi-level list by first creating a bulleted or numbered list, and then each time you use your tab key to indent, it's going to give you a different style bullet to indicate that outline, that hierarchy that's in a multi-level list. Now, these paragraphs are all the same level. Because they're, how do I know? Because they're all on the same, they're all on the same alignment tab, right? They're all flush. Nothing's indented to the right. So they're all the same level, which means they're all going to be whatever the first bullet in these examples is, because that's level 1. Does that make sense? So this is level 1. Underneath would be level 2. Underneath that would be level 3, etc. All right, and I'll show you what I mean in a second so you can see what it looks like in real time. But for now, what you're looking for is the first bullet in each example. Select the one you like and click on it. Oops, and I already messed up because I undid my selection. Let's try that again. There we go. So I clicked on the bullet I liked, and now I have a bulleted list. Okay, the program knows where to put the bullets. It goes by your paragraphs, okay, where you press the enter key. That's where it's going to place your bullet. Now, when you're in a bulleted mode like this, any kind of list mode, whether it's bullets, checklists, or numbers, all right, it's got to keep that turned on, meaning if I wanted to insert a new list item between these two, it's going to give me another bullet. Now, if you're still confused about what that multi-level list is, if I press tab right now, notice how the bullet changes. All right, so as I keep hitting the tab key, I'm going to get different types of bullets. Again, that's to create an outline. Just to show you don't have to do that, I'm just showing you what that looks like. Word does the same thing. So this is level 1, level 2, level 3, etc. Now let me just undo to get back to what it was before. Okay, additionally, if I create a new list item after the last one, I'm still going to have a bullet. If you want to exit, okay, if you're ever creating a document where you want a bulleted list and normal paragraphs, okay, so if right now I wanted to go back to normal paragraphs, I would create this new line like I just did, and then just go back up to my toolbar and turn off the bullet tool, and it goes back to normal paragraphs. Again, if you have a list in your document, and then you want to stop creating that list and go back to normal paragraphs, first create your new line, and then turn off that list tool in your toolbar, and you'll be back to normal paragraphs. All right. Now, a couple other things real quick. When we added bullets, it also indented each paragraph further to the right. Microsoft Word does the same thing. Okay, you may not have noticed, but it did indent them further to the right. If you want to decrease your indent, it's a little tricky in Docs. The decrease indent, you have your decrease and increase indent tools up here in the toolbar, but they don't work here quite the same way they do in Word. So you could always use your ruler at the top. That triangle there, that's your alignment. You can click and drag and move it back to wherever you want. But I'm just going to leave it as is. I think it's fine. Because remember, those triangles in your ruler, those are your alignment tabs. All right, now another thing it did, again, just like Word does, when we applied the bullets, it omitted or removed the spacing between the paragraphs. That's because it's, instead of treating it like paragraphs, it's now treating it like list items. We can add the spaces back if we want by just going to the line and paragraph spacing tool. So I'm going to first select each list item the same way we did before. Select your first line, and then just go down until you've selected everything. Now I'm going to go up to that same line and paragraph spacing tool. Remember, if you don't see it in your toolbar, if you're having trouble finding it, go to Format and go to Line and Paragraph Spacing here. Now you'll see where it says add space before and after, instead of paragraph, it says list item. That's because it's treating this as a list. It's a different type of document. All right, so all I'm going to do is click on add space after list item, and I'll get some spaces back. Now, if you think it looks a little bit too spread apart, you can always change it. Again, to go back to line and paragraph spacing, go to custom spacing. Before it was set to 6, so if I want to go back to 6, I just get rid of the 10, replace it with a 6, and click apply. So again, if you want to customize your paragraph spacing, after you click the add space tool and you still want to change it, go to the line and paragraph spacing dropdown, go to custom spacing, and assign the number of points you want here in the after box. Of course, you first must make sure that all of your list items are selected. All right, so that looks a little bit better. I like having these bullets. Again, it kind of makes it look like a list, like, because they are in fact highlights. So we have a bulleted list, the bullet points, the takeaways from our main annual report. Now, the styles are all set. So we increased our font size for the title to draw a little more attention to it. We changed the font for our entire document to make it look a little more formal. Okay, to kind of emphasize or convey that this is a professional document, not something silly or lighthearted. And then we just change our paragraphs to bulleted list items. So now we're on our final phase, which is to review this for any potential errors. Now, there are some obvious errors, and then there are some that are not so obvious. Let's talk about the obvious ones first. Just like Microsoft Word, Google Docs will keep track of spelling errors as you type. Notice the red squiggly lines. All right, so we can identify the spelling errors and fix them using our spelling and grammar check tool. So you have a couple places to get to this. In your toolbar, all the way to the left, or almost all the way, is that A with a check mark. That's spelling and grammar check. You can also go to your tools drop down and select it from here. Now, as I always advise this in the Word classes, I always set up my cursor, my insertion point at the beginning of the document, because remember, it's going to start where your insertion point is, your spell check, meaning that if it's before the word recess, it's going to start here. It will eventually circle back to the one above it. I just find it easier to follow along if I'm starting at the actual beginning of the document and finishing at the actual end of the document. So I always set up my cursor first at the beginning, and then I launch my spelling and grammar check. Okay, and it works. It's very simple to use. Okay, we see the spelling and grammar pane on the right here. It's saying change intermediate, so it's showing the incorrect spelling first, the way it's spelled in the document right now, and then it shows the suggested spelling underneath, what it thinks we're trying to spell. Sometimes we might get more than one suggestion, it all depends. All right, to change it to that spelling, you simply click on the suggestion, and then it will change it and move on to the next error. All right, I'll do the same thing with recessed here. I'll do this with attract, outsourcing, and then Halloween. Now, before I click on this one, down here you'll see ignore and accept. Accept is just another way to accept the change. Next to accept is these three dots, this little meatball menu. All right. Remember, there's the except all, kind of like we see in Word. So if you made this same spelling error several times in your document, you could just accept all of them, change all of them with just one click rather than having to do each one individually. Okay, so let me click accept here and then I'll talk about ignore in 1 second. Now, if you're getting any other errors, you might be getting your last name as a spelling error in your header. Okay, so much like Microsoft Word, Google Docs will often flag your name, especially your last name, as a spelling error. It does this because it's not in the dictionary, it's unique. So it thinks it's a spelling error, but it's really not. So if that's the case, you have a few options. You can either just ignore it to get rid of this red squiggly line and move on to the next error. You can go to the 3 dots here and select ignore all. If you made that's if your last name shows up multiple times, you can ignore all of them. Okay, all the flags. Or perhaps the best option is to add it to the dictionary where you see here. All right, so if it's always a good idea with names to add them to the dictionary. So in the future, when you're creating a new document, it doesn't flag it as an error anymore, and you don't have to worry about doing this again, okay? You just kind of avoid that hassle. So I always add my name to the dictionary if I'm using a new program of some kind, just so it doesn't flag it as an error. So just showing you that you can do that. All right, but I'm just gonna change it back to the correct spelling, and then I'll be all set with my spelling and grammar check. Oops. And I didn't double click. There we go. And remember, everything automatically saves to my Google Drive. Oops. Real quick, someone is asking, one of my virtual students is asking about a missing toolbar. What I think it might be, I'll show you on my screen here. Over to the right, where we see that we're in editing mode. To the right of that is an up arrow. If you point at it, it says hide the menus. If we click on this, it's going to hide your drop downs. But the toolbar is still there, so I'm not sure if that's what the issue is. If we click on the drop down again, the menus will come back. So other than that, I'm not exactly sure what the issue is at the moment, but it's something I could look into after class. All right, so let's go back to our document. Last but not least, we're almost done. There's one more error we need to fix. This one's not obvious because the program isn't catching it. All right, and this is also a good time to remind you that it's always good practice to always proofread, even though you have these built-in proofreading tools to locate and fix errors. There's still things that the program might not pick up on, so still proofread because we do have an error here. I'm going to scroll back down and go back to this gentleman we talked about earlier, John Doe. His name shows up 3 times in this document. Twice in this paragraph and once down in this paragraph. All right, his first name. So John, he spells his first name Jon, not John, which is another common way of spelling the name John. So we need to fix it so his name is spelled correctly the way he spells it, Jon. Okay, Google Docs didn't pick up on it, of course, because this is a common way of spelling John, so it just assumes it's spelled correctly, but it's not. So we need to change them to John. Now let's let's pretend that this document is 30 pages long. John's name shows up 100 times. All right, it would take way too long to sift through the whole document, look for every instance of the name John, and then change them. All right, because it's too time consuming and there's a good chance we might miss a few of them. So remember when I told you about tools that allow us to sift through large amounts of text, look for things, select those things, and maybe change those things. Those tools are in our edit dropdown. So go up to your edit menu and click on it, and down at the bottom, click on find and replace. This allows us to find something in our text and replace it with something else. So in the find box, type in JOHN, because that's what we're looking for. Notice it says 1 of 3 there, okay, because it shows you in the document itself where they are. And underneath in the replace with box, type in capital J and then ON. We're replacing it with JON. Now, kind of like our spelling and grammar check tool, we can replace these one by one or just replace them all with one click. We're just going to click on replace all. Now, this stays open in case there are other things we want to find and replace. We don't, so all we have to do is click on the X here to close this box. And if you look, it did accurately update them to the new spelling of JON. All right, find and replace is a great tool, not just for errors, just for kind of quick, almost in a way I like to think of it as kind of bulk formatting. So for example, if next year I want to use the same exact format for my 2022 report, all right, I want to use the same exact format. Okay, all I have to do to quickly make some updates is go to find and replace, find 2021, replace it with 2022. All right, you don't have to do this, I'll just show you on my screen. So now the titles change in the beginning of each paragraph. And let me just undo it back to 2021. So again, find and replace, great for locating and fixing errors, and also great for kind of bulk or large scale formatting. All right, one moment, we're just getting a quick sip of water, and then we'll a few more things to go over, and then we're going to be all set here for Google Docs. All right, someone asked if Google Docs has a cover page tool. In Microsoft Word, we're able to insert a cover page, which does two things. It allows us to select the cover page template that's stored in the program, and it also will insert it at the beginning of your document. Google Docs doesn't have a cover page tool. It's a built-in cover page tool. You kind of have to build it from scratch. So I would encourage you to just kind of, literally Google it and just see. There are a lot of great directions out there that kind of explain how to create a good looking cover page. But basically you just create a new document and make sure that that your first page will be your cover page. All right, but there's no sort of direct insert cover page tool like we find in Word. All right, so let me just zoom out a little bit so I can get a better view of this entire document. All right, so it looks much better now. All right. Are there any questions so far about what we did here in this document? Yeah. All right, sorry for the brief pause there, folks. Let's talk about a few more things. So our document's all set. All right, now remember, because yours is not necessarily linked to a Google account, you really can't go much further than here, okay? It's being saved to my drive, but I will show you a few other things, so you can just kind of watch for a few moments. Some of the basic things that we often want to do with documents like this. So first of all, I want to go to the File menu here, okay? I kind of went over some of these in Google Drive, but I'll review again real quick. So first of all, you can from here start a new Google Doc. You can open an existing Google Doc, in addition to what you're working on now. There's also the make a copy tool. If you ever want to make a copy of a doc, you can do so from here. You can also do it in Google Drive directly, as I showed you last week, but you can do that here. This is a great tool to use in conjunction with sharing, which we covered last week. So if you want to know more about sharing, I encourage you to check out that Google Drive video. All right, but because when we share files through Google Drive, remember, if we're sharing them and we're allowing people to edit it, that means that we have to be careful if we want to keep our original version to ourselves and then have a different version that other people can work on. We can make a copy and then share that copy. Okay, so we're not sharing the original. Underneath, we have email. This allows you to email this doc as basically an attachment in an email. Okay. Under email is download. So here is where if you want to download your Google Doc and open it in Microsoft Word on your computer, this is where you would do that. You would download it as a Microsoft Word file format, .docx. It would download it to your computer. I'll do it right now so you can see. All right, down there at the bottom left, it does indicate that it's successfully downloaded. There it is. I'm going to click on it, and when I do, it will open up automatically in Word. And there it is. Okay, now keep in mind, sometimes when we are kind of working between the Google Docs format and the Microsoft Word format, though they are technically compatible, sometimes our formatting gets a little messed up, so it's always good to review it and correct any little little changes, inadvertent changes that were made. And in fact, I'm going to show you, I'm going to open up a Word doc in a sec to show you something else to look at if you're going the other way, opening a Word document in Google Docs. But let's focus on this first. So again, that was download Microsoft Word. There are other file formats you can download this to or convert this to. I just want to briefly mention PDF. All right, so if for example, oftentimes people want things sent to them as PDFs. So especially things like resumes and cover letters. So if you create your cover letter or resume in Google Docs, you can then convert it to a PDF. It will download to your computer, and then you can then attach that PDF to an email or whatever to get it along to that potential employer. Okay, so that's available here under download. Now, I want to go to version history real quick. Remember I told you before you can revert to any prior version of a document very easily. So if you go to version history, to the right, I'm going to click on See Version History, and it's going to take me to this screen. All right. So here's your version history. Okay. It's basically going to show you all the steps you took to get to the current version of your document. Now you'll see mine says February. That's because I originally opened this back in February. Okay, but don't worry about that. Basically, I reverted it back to the original again for this class. But what you're going to see here at the top is the current version, the way it looks right now. If I click on the arrow next to that, it's going to show me all the other versions, the other steps I took in between the current version and the original, which is down at the bottom. Okay, the first thing listed. Now, as long as you have show changes checked off at the bottom here, where I'm pointing with my mouse pointer, I'll point down there again, right down here. If you look at the actual preview, it's going to show you the changes you made in that particular version. So you can see sometimes they're not so obvious. You kind of have to guess, or not really guess, but kind of look a little bit harder to see what changes were made. Sometimes they will be obvious. All right, so again, if you want to revert to a prior version, you simply go to that version in the list, go to the three dots on the right, and select restore this version. Again, be careful because you'll revert back to this and potentially lose changes you made after. So another good time to use a copy, and you'll see, in fact, make a copies here. So you can make a copy of an earlier version, but keep the current one as a separate file, so you don't potentially overwrite the current one. All right, so again, you just have to make sure show changes is checked off in case you want to see the changes that were made in a particular version. Now to exit the version history screen, we go up to the top left to that arrow. There's an arrow there next to today, and we click on it. All right, again, I covered sharing in the Google Drive class, so I encourage you to check out that video where I cover how to share your work with other people, whether they're Google users or non-Google users. Okay. One last thing I want to review. You could just watch for a second. I'm gonna go back to my home page, my start screen. All right, I'm gonna open up a Word document. It's actually the same document, but in the Word format. Okay, so remember, when you open up a Word document in Google Docs, first of all, as another kind of indicator that this is a Word document, you'll see the .docx file extension up here to indicate that that's the format this is in right now. You can still edit it just as is, but a kind of safer bet is to go to File and go to Save as Google Docs. It will then convert it to the Google Docs format, save it as a separate copy, and it's just a bit more stable in terms of the formatting. In case you make changes here, you re-download it as a Word document, and now all of a sudden the formatting is all off. So just as a safeguard, when you open up a Word document in Google Docs, save it to the Google Docs format, and then make your edits after that point in that Google Docs version. Okay, and the only thing I forgot to cover, something very basic, let me go back to the Google Docs version, I'm sorry, is printing. All right, if you want to print, you simply go to File, go down to Print, and it'll get a print preview just like you do in Microsoft Office. There are some more settings you could use in terms of the page setup. We don't need to worry about this. Now, for those of you here in person, if you're happy with the way yours looks, you can go ahead and print. Just click on Print here. Okay, so Google Docs is pretty simple. It prints directly from the program. If you plan on taking Google Sheets next week, you're going to see that Google Sheets is a bit different. It downloads it to your computer as a PDF, and then you print it. It's just has something to do with the file format. But here in Google Docs, it prints directly from the Google Docs app. Very simple. All right, so for those of you attending virtually, now would be a good time to send any remaining questions you might have through GoToMeeting. In the meantime, I'm going to go through a few closing remarks, and then we'll be all set for the day here. All right, so thank you for coming to Google Docs today. The next class in our Google series will be Google Sheets, next Wednesday, March 23rd at 2 p.m. All right, and in that class, we'll talk about the basics of this free spreadsheet program. Again, Google Sheets is an equivalent to Microsoft Excel. So we're going to kind of do the same pace we did today. We're going to talk about it a little bit, talk about the screen, and then do some exercises to get us used to using Google Sheets and introduce us to the tools. Again, works remarkably similar to Microsoft Excel. Remember that this was recorded. It will be available on our library's YouTube channel. To get to that YouTube channel, go to our website at mcl.org and then click on the YouTube icon at the top left of the homepage. Once you click that, it will take you to our YouTube channel. Once you're there, go to Playlists from the main menu and then click on Computer Instruction, and you'll see our recordings. Oh, actually, I shouldn't put that here, sorry, because we don't have a handout for this class yet. But as I instructed, Google has a great support site. As always, we hope you sign up for some more classes, so we have more this month. Okay, and in April, we're going to repeat many of the same classes again in April. So if you missed something, check back in April, or you could always retake classes if you want. Those classes will be coming out pretty soon. All right, so you can sign up yourself by going to our website. All right, go to mcl.org and just go to either the events dropdown or to our technology instruction page under services. Either way, you can get to our events, go to our computer classes, and sign up for whatever classes interest you. All right, and we do have a few virtual private sessions left for this month, this coming Friday. All right, so if you want to sign up for a 20-minute private session virtually between 10 and 2 p.m. on Friday, you'll find that in the same calendar. Okay, typically in these sessions, I kind of help you troubleshoot a device maybe, or give you some help on an existing computer project. Now, if you have any other questions about our technology instruction program, you could always send an email to techclass@mcl.org. All right, so basically anytime you need to reach me about something to do with the program, a class, whatever it might be, that's the email address you can use, techclass@mcl.org. Now, for those of you attending virtually, if you have no further questions at this time, you can click on the X in the upper right-hand corner of the GoToMeeting window and then select Leave Meeting. If you are leaving us, thanks so much for coming today, and I hope to see you again in class very soon. Take care.